Tyler here, and today we're going to change out an NA Miata shifter turret. First, we're going to remove the neutral switch. Next, we'll remove the reverse switch. Next, we're going to remove the cover on the side here by taking out these four 10mm bolts. They are slightly different lengths, top and bottom. Just keep track of that.
And throw the cover in your pan.
Always throw the cover in your pan. I'm kidding, don't do that. As you can see, a great reason to clean it out is all of this gunk.
Oh yeah.
Filling it up in there. This is all old shifter bushings and metal shavings collected over time. It's all over here. A great reason to clean out in here. You can see the difference even a quick spray made, but we will need something to pull out the rest of it, like a pick.
All them shavings and bushings out.
Oh yeah. All of that.
Debris.
Next, we want to remove this plug. Now, at the end of it is a detent ball. You want to be careful to keep track of that ball. You may have to tilt the trans slightly to get it out.
There it is.
There we are. Oop. Little detent ball. Keep track of that with a plug. Now we want to remove the side cover here by taking out these two 10mm bolts. Be careful, there is a small spring in there and it will have a little bit of tension. Or maybe not, because we removed the plug. Then, boop. This little guy is sometimes stuck up in there. Just push him on out. Next, we will remove the speed sensor with this one 10mm bolt. There we go. Just to keep it safe. Next, we have to separate the tail shaft housing from the rest of the transmission by removing these 8 12mm bolts. And there we are. Now we have to separate the seam between the rear housing and the middle. A little tap with a hammer. Transmission falls on you. But it's separated. We have separation. Pull back slightly and carefully. A piece of wood to chock the transmission is helpful.
Be sure not to forget to pull this roll pin out.
Even though it comes out with it. There we have rear housing separated. Here we have our rear tail shaft housing. Now we can continue with removing the rear shifter turret. Next, we have to take out the selector rod from in here. Hold this cup with one hand and slightly pull and wiggle the rod with this hand. You should feel them separating. Slowly. And there we are. Next, we remove these four 12mm bolts. Now, we can pull out the shifter turret. There are two dowel pins, one between this set of bolts and one between this set of bolts. So you kind of have to lift up and back at the same time. Screwdrivers and a pry bar might assist if it's stuck. There we are. Shifter turret is removed and a replacement can go on. Even after our spray out, you can still see how much gunk is left in there. This is another great way to simply clean out the shifter turret and refill it with new oil. Now we can begin putting everything back together. But first, in order to get a good seal as we reinstall the tail shaft housing and the shifter turret, we need to clean the surfaces so we can lay a new gasket. Now that we have our nice clean turret, we can begin the reassembly. Simply insert this back into there, a little wiggle, line up the dowels, get it seated. Now we will insert the selector rod. We will leave it loose for now to make sliding it back onto the actual transmission a little easier on us. Now we're going to reapply some RTV for a gasket. We have our tail shaft housing and we're ready to slide it back on. Now, I left the shifter selector rod loose so that I can make realigning it on the transmission easy. We're going to take it and slide it down. We're going to stick this guy right in the center there, and then slide the transmission down right over it and lock her in. Easy as that. Now simply reinstall the bolts. Now before we fully bolt down the rear tail shaft seal, we want to reinsert the cup piece. Simply lift up on the housing slightly, slide it in, and on. Now we can fully seal the tail shaft housing. Now we're going to reinstall the roll pin in the bucket here. And you might have to tap it a little bit with a hammer to get it started. And there we are. Right. Now we can put it back on. Remember, smaller bolts go on top. Now we can reinstall this piece. Simply slide it up in. Take our spring, slide that up in. Finally the cover. Now we are going to reinstall the detent ball and plug and spring assembly. Pop the ball in, put the plug in, screw it in. The ball will self-align. Now we can begin reinstalling our switches. Now we are going to perform what we call the Brett test. You take a shifter, you stick it in the transmission, and you make sure the transmission can shift gears. That way you don't go through all the effort of putting a transmission in your car that won't go in gear. And there we go. It passes the Brett test. And there you have it. That's how to change out the shifter turret on any 90 to 97 Mazda Miata manual transmission. Thank you for watching.